Chaos, starring Neurotoxin and Joe Ryan. Edge of Chaos is a free-flowing discussion occasionally dealing with mature topics.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of The Edge of Chaos. I'm Neurotoxin, and today, instead of Joe Ryan, we're going to have Jade Ryan. Not because he's changing his gender or anything along those lines, but just because I've never seen this man so jaded, and I've known him for 17 years. So
Jade kind of makes it sound like I'm
Jade.
changing my gender, just for the record.
No, Joe's not changing his gender.
What about
just,
cynical asshole Joe Ryan? What about that?
I've known that guy for 17 years.
That's not a new identity, I guess.
No, that's not really changing anything. But you've always kind of been jaded, I guess, Joe. But I guess this situation just has you through the ground with it.
Yeah, well,
So
I was reading a survey, by the way, another survey about millennials, by the way. But then I read this other BuzzFeed thing, and I know BuzzFeed is garbage, but about how people of my age specifically, and well, I guess yours too, are tend to be more Gen X than Gen Y. You know, we're cynical assholes like Gen X people were.
No, I think we're kind of on the end of Gen X. We're not really millennials. You know, we're not really.
We
Gen
are.
Y.
No, technically we are.
Yeah.
Everyone always says 80 to, I think, whatever.
No, it's not 80. It's like late 60s to like mid 80s. So by birth.
You know what's funny is I guess it depends on what you read. Is the other thing that's fucked up about how they judge. It's like, who's in charge of this?
Generational science is not an exact science.
No.
The reason I'm so Gen X, I can tell you, is because I grew up in the USSR for the first 10 years of my life, and that like the USSR is always a little behind with this, like with development, and this matters when it comes to generational science. So I'm definitely Gen X.
I know why I'm Gen X because I grew up in a country with Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush as president. But anyhow,
all right, there you go. That'll Gen X, yeah.
That's
Gen
why
X.
I'm Gen X. Fuck everything. Just who cares? Fuck it all.
Pretty much. So is that how you're starting to feel about our political situation now?
And you and I were talking about this on the phone yesterday, and it's one of our legendary phone calls where, like, you were talking about what's going on, and I basically just said, you know what? Fuck the entire world and everyone in it. And is this? I haven't even bothered looking this up. Is this true that they're going to shut the government down? Okay. In the lame duck? Can we let's introduce this for everyone just so I can react to it
even get along in the lame duck anymore. It's so sad. The lame duck session. The reason they even have a lame duck session, I'm pretty sure the reason they extended the lame duck session is because, with deadlock, and it's so difficult for Congress to get anything done, that you figure, okay, when you have a few people that are retiring, resigning, they have been voted out of office, whatever, they're at least a little bit more free to vote their conscience and not be worried about getting reelected. So it's a way to get some things done. I have mixed feelings about that, but I'm saying, factually speaking, that's always been the case.
It's usually the time for deal making, yeah.
Yes,
wheel and deal. Hell, even in the movie Lincoln, they were trying to get the fucking amendment passed in the lame duck.
There you go, yeah. Even then, right? Even then. I mean, you talk about a worse standoff, a worse gridlock in our history than that, right?
Right.
Than the Civil War. Probably this is
they got a fucking amendment passed.
Okay, so here's what's going on. First of all, before we even go there, the Keystone XL pipeline failed yesterday.
Ended up failing, yeah.
By one vote.
By one vote in the Senate.
And it was 59 to 41, and it was Mary Landrieu, the Democratic senator from Louisiana, the one race that remains undecided. They still have to go to a runoff on December 6th, I believe it is, in the first week of December, and don't quote me on that date. And I'm pretty sure Bill Cassidy is going to end up winning that one. And this is kind of her last-ditch effort to save herself. She's actually pretty pro-oil. She's a pretty conservative Democrat in that sense.
Actually, if I was just thinking if it's a Tuesday, it's probably either the 2nd or 2 days after the 6th, which is the 8th.
I that's why I said don't quote me. I'm not sure. But in any case, they have the runoff, and she was trying to save this, so she was trying to pull enough Democrats together to get this passed. And it's funny, if you look at who voted for it, of the Democrats, a lot of the Democrats are Democrats that are going to be gone. They're either retiring or they're people that have been voted out. Begich, Pryor, Hagan, those guys. So it's interesting. But still, when and it failed by one vote, but they expect that when Republicans take control of the Senate in January, it's going to pass regardless. So, but I'm saying they can't even get consensus on that. So now the shutdown, this is what's going on. And again, I'm going to be slightly vague about this because really I don't think the issue is the most important thing out there. Now, what we're looking at, the shutdown, is obviously over immigration reform. And I don't think the issue is all that important by itself. We've been dealing with this issue ever since our start as a country. Immigration has been a major issue in this country. And everyone that wants to talk about how, oh, these immigrants are different from the immigrants in the late 19th century, and they're different from the Italians in the 1800s. You don't know your history.
They've said that ever since, white Protestants from England got here. It was always, they're different than us. So,
well, the Native Americans were saying that about them, and in that case, they might have been right. But everybody says it's like, no.
Them has been a lot of people. Italians, Jews, Irish, Eastern Europeans, Chinese, Mexicans. I mean, take your pick.
How do I say it? They is anyone who's not them.
Right.
It's just, this is stupid. So I'm not going to get into that issue. This is not a show on immigration. This is a show on gridlock and jadedness with Jade Ryan. So, So my thing is this. Basically, Congress has been stalemated on this for many years. We've needed some sort of reform that deals with the number of undocumented migrants that we have in this country, and something to deal with just the number we have. I'm not even suggesting any kind of policy solution right now. I'm just saying that's the problem. And of course, Republicans want to build bigger walls because somehow a taller wall is supposed to be harder to climb. You need to call China, ask them how that works. And then
really.
Democrats.
Or call the Russians. Hey, I'll ask you. How does that work? How'd that work in Berlin?
It worked in Berlin because it was tiny. The wall was only a few miles long, and you had guys with rifles on top. So actually, there it worked. You can't do that for 2,100 miles.
Try to multiply that in 1,000+ mile long border in the middle of the fucking desert.
2,100 miles.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
what am I thinking?
That's not going to work. Yeah, and then that's just one border too. So. Here's the thing. Again, we're not going to get into the depths of immigration debate here, but with Democrats, a lot of them want path to citizenship, amnesty, guest worker programs, and I'm somewhat in favor of that. Obviously, more sympathetic to the Democrats on this issue, but you really cannot have amnesty for something that's illegal, and you have rounds of amnesty. You already had one round of amnesty under Reagan, so you're just encouraging people to break the law. So, in my opinion, this is one of those issues where both sides just have it horrendously wrong. My outlook is very simple. We need to open the borders. Nothing else is going to work. It's every bit as stupid as drug prohibition or as restrictions on guns. It's unenforceable. But like I said, that's a different story.
Well, for someone who's not a fan of bureaucracy, as any of our listeners would know, the current system, you can't just go and say, oh yeah, nothing wrong there. Leave it alone. It's fine. Don't worry. Don't fix it. No. It's perfectly efficient. Fine. Yeah, no. No. You want smash your head against the wall, frustrating bureaucracy. Look no further than our immigration system. Anyway.
Well, you should ask the dead bodies in Arizona that have died of dehydration if there's no problem there. You should ask the DHS agent that got shot by the Mexican drug cartels with our guns that got smuggled across the border because of Fast and the Furious if there's no problem. All of these things go back to immigration. It's a very, very wide-stretching, deep issue, which is why I don't want to get too into it on this show because that's what we're not about. So not what we're about tonight. In any case, so with Obama, because of the stalemate in Congress, and because Obama, for better or for worse, wants to talk about how, this is such a huge problem, and now, of course, we have the tens of thousands of children from Central America, which is a huge problem, which is kind of a new addition to this age-old problem. He's got to do something for relief. Obama is great at making speeches and tugging at the heartstrings of people who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground when it comes to politics. Bush was good at that, at scaring people. Oh, the evil terrorists. And now Obama is good at making people cry and feel sympathetic. It's equally stupid. In any case, he's talking about executive action to basically change some of the policies and the way people are dealt with. It's like deferred deportation for those children, and for what's called dreamers, which would be people that were brought here as children that didn't really have a say in it.
Right.
So it's kind of the same idea. And then some other policy changes that may not necessarily be bad ideas, but they are things that the president is not authorized to do, as from an executive perspective. The Constitution does not specifically say this is an executive function. And Obama is saying, well, Congress is not doing anything. I have to do something. And then Congress is now saying, and the way they have to pass a budget by December 10th or we shut down again. Here we are again.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the same clip that we keep coming around to. And they purposely put this in the lame duck. That's not a coincidence that it's there after the election.
Yeah, and they were because they thought, oh well, that'll obviously just pass without any problem, right?
Of course, yeah. And the sun won't rise tomorrow. So that's the idea, and they're talking about now attaching to the budget. Republicans in the House, because remember the Senate's still controlled by Democrats until early January.
Right.
Republicans in the House are saying we're going to pass a budget with amendments attached that specifically forbid the president from taking this executive action. And the way they're going to do that is they're going to prescribe exactly how those laws should be and what those agencies should do with their funding, and basically write something contrary to such an executive order. And Obama cannot change that on his own, because Congress does have the authority to specify that. It usually does not, but it can. Of course, Obama can veto it, but then he's vetoing the whole budget bill, which means no budget, which means government shuts down again.
I do have an Obama question.
What's that?
Which is really a presidential question. Where is the precedent, the constitutional one? Because I don't know the answer, and I thought that it was a blind spot, and that's why they've been able to do this. But isn't it funny that executive orders have not been a problem until the black guy used them? And we'll get back to that. Anyway.
Honestly,
if there is no basis constitutionally for executive orders, why the fuck has every modern president used them? Well, and why are we screaming about any of those things that they've done? Because they're not all good. A lot of them were really bad,
awful, especially under some Democrat presidents like FDR, but also Bush Senior.
Yeah, the internment of Japanese was executive order, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, but here's the thing about executive orders. I don't know, to be honest with you, the history of all of them. I do know that under FDR, there was a lot of opposition to his use of executive orders, for example. But that's under Democrat. When it comes to Republicans, Reagan, Bush Sr., they were notorious for them.
They've all done it, and Obama's actually issued way less than all of those guys.
You see, the thing is, it's not about the number of them you issue. To me, that's just liberal propaganda.
Well, I mean, it isn't, but it's true. If you're talking about it as a thing, each one is a violation, then...
Right, but no, I don't think... I mean, anyone that says each one is a violation is just a fucking idiot and does not know civics. It's not about what... They're not a violation. The president can pass executive orders. That's not out of the question. The president, it's what he has the authority to do using executive orders. And the argument from a lot of people is that a lot of what Obama has done with executive orders is overstepping presidential authority. He does not, in fact, have the authority to do that using executive orders. Now, in my opinion, that's accurate, but your criticism is on target that other presidents have done the same executive order that were not within the presidential authority. And let's say there was less clamor about it. Now,
do we want to get into what W was doing with executive orders?
Okay. To me, that's a criticism of Democrats. They should have bitched about it, and they didn't.
Oh, completely.
Democrats have
I was bitching about it at the time, but that's me.
Right. They have no balls.
No.
And then they want to cry when they do the same thing Republicans did that they didn't complain about, and Republicans have the balls to complain. And libertarians are sitting here.
Well, I don't know if it's balls as much as it's just political calculus, but anyway.
Political calculus? So you're saying if Democrats had stood up to Bush Jr. in 2002, that was political calculus?
I'm just not necessarily equating it to balls, because believe me, I look at this group of not only who's going out, but who's coming in. I don't see a lot of balls on many of these supposed guys.
I see the balls. I don't see the brains. I don't see the brains, but I definitely see the balls. They're gutsy. I don't know how you would say that there's not coming up, but like someone like Ted Cruz does not have balls, that he's not.
There's a fine line between gutsy and fucking insane, but anyway, we'll get back to that.
Okay, fucking insane people are still gutsy. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying that I feel like the courage is there. It's not necessarily...
But if you don't realize why something's stupid, then you're not really gutsy, you're just ignorant, let's say.
I don't... Well, okay, but...
And I don't think that... What's funny about the last shutdown is none of them realized, none of those... like Tea Party types who really wanted to go down to the wire. Actually, that's the one thing the neocons did was like, as much as our economy is a stupid system and a very like tilted system and all that, they were about to crash the entire thing into the ditch, and it would have fucked everybody over equally.
We had this conversation.
Including the rich benefactors, and it took the neocons to go, you're not actually going to do this, are you? We're just having fun and playing and making fun of the black guy for a while. You're not actually going to drive the economy into the ditch, are you?
I disagree with you completely on both counts. I disagree with you that it would have...
They didn't get it, so, yeah.
Okay, see, I don't get it either, and I'm not them, and we've had this argument on the show before, so you're not just going to present this false premise as if it's the case and not get called on it. I'm sorry.
Neither one of you or I knows what's going to happen because it never has.
Okay, see, exactly. But you're acting as if you do. You're saying you're presenting a hypothetical as a premise.
It is hypothetical, but the prevailing evidence from those in the know was that it would be really bad.
That's not prevailing evidence. That's supposed expert advice or expert opinion from people that are extremely biased and that follow the Keynesian school of economics, which also suggests all the policies these guys are trying to break down. So no, you're not going to convince anybody, but with false premises of what would have happened. It could have. We don't know. I am personally very skeptical that would have been remotely as bad as the Tim Geithner said it would be. I'm not saying
I don't believe Tim Geithner, but
it wouldn't. Well, but that was one of the people bitching about it.
He wasn't the only one, is what
he wasn't there, but he was one of them. You're talking about people in the know. There is an in the know.
I didn't mean him. He's not in the know of anything.
Okay, good. We're on the same page.
Be clear about that. He's in the know of like who holds his balls in a jar. That's who he knew.
Well, He's
That's what he knew.
Of how many years in prison he owes.
He knew when Jamie Dimon walked into a room, he gets on his knees and they're sucking the guy's cock. That's what he knew.
Pretty much, that too. Yeah. No,
anyway,
but in any case,
we can bash Tim Geithner the whole show.
I don't want to know the things he's in the know about. Really, if you think about going there, the things he knows about Jamie Dimon, I would rather go to my grave without. No. Now, moving along.
Moving right along from the sexual habits of Tim Geithner.
Yeah. You just can't stop, can you, Joe? Now, moving on. To me, you're saying, oh, they're stupid. To me, no, they do have the balls to keep pushing their agenda and what they want. Now, I'm not saying I agree with that 100%. When everyone, basically the popular consensus is saying, no, that's bad. This is the bad things are going to happen. To me, that is gutsy. To me, I'm not saying you have to agree with it to acknowledge that there is courage involved there. They're standing up for what they believe in. Democrats, in large part, do not do that. There are some who do. And I'm talking about politicians, not voters. But I've seen them just fall in line with Republicans so much over the last, let's say decade and a half, really kind of discouraging. So moving on. So now we're on the verge of another shutdown. And in the lame duck session, I think the big kind of message, the reason this is happening, and the reason Boehner grew some balls and is basically now pandering to the Tea Party, whereas before he would, come out in public and say, oh yeah, part of my caucus does not understand that we only control one side of the government, only one house, and blah, blah. He's basically trying to play the middle guy. Now he's out there saying we're going to fight the president tooth and nail. So he woke up and smelled the coffee. Oh shit, the Tea Party is getting bigger and neocons are getting smaller, and I have to kind of hop in with the Tea Party or they're going to bounce me as speaker, which I think may happen anyway, but let's not go there.
Can we revisit this idea of Fox News crowd that this election was a mandate? Because that's one thing we were getting most passionate about the other night when we were talking, especially since now we know for sure this was the worst turnout since 1942. Let that sink in for a minute.
In 1942, a lot of our population was overseas fighting a war.
Right.
There was not really like absentee ballots.
We have literally less people voting for our election in this last election than voted for like the Voices contestant that won on the show, or that would vote for American Idol back in the day when it was actually popular to vote on American Idol. I mean, it's pathetic. And
talk about jadedness, right, Joe?
Well, I mean, but it's true. Look at the numbers. Okay. It's horrible. But people, 2/3 of this country sat home.
2/3 of eligible voters. That's a lot more than
sat home. And so how's that a mandate for anything except? And here's the thing that I'll give some credit to Bernie Sanders. I mean, I don't talk about him as much as I should because really with his policies, he's kind of the male Elizabeth Warren, and he's been saying all the same things. And after this election, he's gotten really kind of punchy and pugnacious, especially because he's not a Democrat, but like he hates Republicans, so it's kind of interesting. But he's been saying, it's what this election meant was that voters rejected the system, and they basically just said, you know what's the point? And they stayed home. So basically what he's saying is the people acted out George Carlin's suggestion of years ago of just fuck it. What's the point?
I'm with him 100%. But here's what objectively did not happen, and I say in your face to every asshole that's been telling me since 2010 that it would, is that Republicans did not get rebuked for shutting down the government and being obstructionist and gridlocking it. Because every stand-up, I'm not just talking about the shutdown in 2013 that Ted Cruz engineered. Every single gridlock, every single standoff, The Democratic propaganda has been, oh, Republicans are going to get punished. Republicans are worried about this. They're careful about this because they're afraid they're going to get punished by the voters because they're going to get blamed for shutting down the system. And it's true that if you look at surveys, more people blame Republicans than Democrats for the gridlock. That doesn't mean they think gridlock is necessarily a bad thing. They just blame the Republicans.
Well, you know what I thought that was stupid at the time was that the election was over a year away. Our attention span in this country is not longer than a few weeks.
It doesn't matter why. The point is, it didn't happen. All you assholes said it would, and I said it wouldn't, and it hasn't. I was right, and you were wrong. Deal with it. Because this, I feel like a lot of politicians, people in Congress, not the Tea Party, not these far-right guys, not libertarians, but rank-and-file Republicans, especially some of the more socially conservative ones that have been there a while, like Michelle Bachmann, let's say, who've kind of been she claims she's Tea Party, but if you look at her voting record, she's actually come somewhere in between. They saw from this election, not her, because I believe she's done, right? But
yeah, she decided to retire, yeah.
But she's still there right now.
In the lame duck, yeah, she's done at the end of the year.
They've seen that, hey, no, voters are not going to rebuke us for this. We're not going to get sent home. We're not going to get bounced out of Congress. We're not going to lose power because we gridlock the government. As long as things continue to be the way they are, and hear me, people, I don't care if this makes you uncomfortable. It's like saying gravity makes you uncomfortable. It's reality. As long as things remain the way they are, Republicans will remain in power. Republicans do not need to change their policy agenda to stay in power. Democrats do. If Democrats change and they behave differently, then perhaps voters will turn out again and rebuke Republicans for the obstructionism. But as long as Democrats keep apologizing for the same shit system that people are jaded about, all Republicans have to do is say, no, fuck the system. We're the guys running against it. We're not really running on anything. We don't even know. We don't even know. Where are we going? We're Congress? What am I running for? Congress? Yeah, Congress. Which house am I running for? John, come here. But at the same time, all you have to do is say, Democrats, bad, Democrats, socialists, Obama, bad.
Well, see, I got to disagree on a few counts. But
they're succeeding. Hold on. But before we even go there, wouldn't you look at this election? Didn't it work?
If you listen to Bernie Sanders, no, it didn't.
Okay, well, let's hear your side of this, I guess.
Well, I mean, what he's saying is that you can't have any kind of message from this election because most people didn't go. The only thing people that did is the kind of what you would call low-hanging fruit, or what Rush would cutely refer to as low-information voters, literally just being shook up emotionally, not logically, by the campaigning, which kind of had a consistency to it in that they were just throwing tomatoes at the Democrats. So of course you're going to get a certain chunk of the population, and literally all they did was just turn out their base. That's it. You know, it didn't seem like with those kind of numbers, they didn't turn out moderates, they didn't turn out most people stayed home, and it seemed like the ones who showed up were the ones who voted for the guys who won. So I don't know. I don't think it wasn't a very diverse election in one sense. And the other sense is, how can you look at the last 8 years with all the pendulum swings back and forth with the parties, and the Republicans were dead 8 years ago. We talked about that in the last show, and now they're back. It's just going to swing right back. And I don't agree at all that the Republicans just keep indefinitely going, nope, obstructionist, nope, because eventually the black guy's going to be gone, and they're going to actually have to come up with something, a response to somebody like Bernie Sanders.
Army of strongmen.
Or Elizabeth Warren, who's going to actually ask them, whose side are you on?
Okay, do you mind if I respond to this? Because you just raised an army of strongmen, so I don't know which order I'm going to do it in, but here's my response to that. First of all, folks, low turnout is an outcome. I'm sick of Democrat apologists and people who just don't want to accept the outcome of this election.
Well, it is, but you can't...
No, hold on.
It is, but you can't judge what the whole country wants based on a small section of it.
I'm not judging what the whole country wants. I'm judging the outcomes of elections.
That's you, but I'm not talking about you.
Okay, but that's what but no, you're disagreeing with me and my projections.
I'm disagreeing with you, but like a lot of people in the media, like the right-wing media, have been crowing about this, like they want something.
Right, and Democrats are crowing about it like, oh, well, no, Americans aren't against us. They just didn't turn out to vote for us to keep those psycho Republicans out. Really?
I'll talk about how stupid that is in a minute. Now, go on.
When we talk about party collapses, okay, the Republicans today, like it or not, for better or for worse, are very different from the Republicans 8 years ago. Very different. And it's even different at the party leadership level. So what happened was they got their asses kicked so badly. And you know what? In 2006, before the election, I was hearing Hannity and Limbaugh and O'Reilly say some of the same shit that we're hearing Democrat pundits say now. Oh, we have the mandate, and Democrats are going to get rebuked for finally standing up to the wars and, wanting to put our troops in harm's way and not wanting to finish the job in Iraq. And then 2006 came, and they lost both houses in one election. It was great. It was very satisfying because, finally, people are waking up to this fear-mongering bullshit about terrorism. That election made me happy for anyone that thinks I'm a Republican.
But, of course, in this election, we turned out with fear-mongering and terrorism. But anyway.
Right. But hold on. But now, I would not say that. Now, Democrats are getting rebuked because basically they passed a bunch of shit that is extremely unpopular. They have not done what they said they would do, is basically restore the Constitution and enema a lot of the shit that Bush Jr. did. They completely failed to do that. Yes, we're out of Iraq, and yes, we're pulling out of Afghanistan. We've also bombed how many countries under Obama? Okay, well, no, hold on.
I'm not disagreeing with that. Actually, we talked about that on the last show.
And then, of course, Obamacare and all the shit they're doing. It's not popular. They want to act as if it is, but it's not. And if you look at the surveys, if you look at the opinion polls, people hate this shit. They may not necessarily hate it the way Republicans want them to hate it, but they think it's a terrible idea. So now Democrats are basically sitting there saying, look, we've done such a great job for teachers. Oh, shit, look at that turnout. Well, no one turned out to vote for them because they represent something that everyone hates. And when all the other party has to do is say, look, yeah, those are the assholes responsible for the modern policies, even though half of those policies are Republican policies, they're neocon policies, they're not necessarily Tea Party policies, and it's working. So what I said, Joe, is that I'm not saying that the Republicans are going to stay in power indefinitely. I'm saying the Democrats are going to take probably one more beating, just like Republicans did in 2008, and then the Democratic leadership will change. They will throw out all those old white goats that are in charge of their party, and that includes the women, like Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
With her goat beard and all. You just picture her with a goat beard? Can't stand her.
I will say that, yes.
And then, if you have the Democratic Party emerge as a different party with different policies and with different ideas, then of course the pendulum will swing back. Did I not say that if Democrats change their approach, this won't work anymore? I said it's a work as long as the Democrats don't change. Republicans don't need to change anything right now as long as Democrats stay the same. That was what I said.
I think that if the Democrats have any brains, then they will purge, just like the Republicans have had to purge the neocons to get anything done. Yeah, this whole thing of this Hillary, we're going to be everything to everyone. We're going to pay lip service to the working class, where we basically just turn you over to fuck you just as bad as anyone else does at the same time. And we act like we're poor. Like Hillary goes on TV and does that shameful interview where she tries to, I'm just like you. Me and Bill, we were just broke when we left the White House until I got my multi-million-dollar book deal and we bought 3 houses in Manhattan so I could run for Congress. Boy, we were just really, really just scraping it there, It was hard. We had to go down to 3 houses from 5. I mean, Jesus. What could we do? And we had to live in Little Rock for a little while after that because Manhattan is so expensive. Until I got my full house there, see. I had to set up residency, so that was hard. It's just horrible. And so then you have, someone like me, someone like the friend of mine, who looks at this shit and hates Obama too, even though he hates him in completely opposite ways as you do. We still hate him. And you're right in that, yeah, Democrats at the same time as Republicans are sitting there going, we wanted it to mandate for us. No. But Democrats can't just go, none of our voters just showed up, so it's just, we just get an incomplete on that one. Not an F. Yeah. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, really? Really? You look at an election result like that and think, let me bash them. I will. You're right. They deserve a bashing. Let me bash them a little bit. You can't sit here and look at what happened and go, we'll just keep at it and keep this middle of the road. We stand for whatever you want us to this week. Kind of working class supportive, but really we're big business and we let the banks get away with everything they did and just give them paltry fines and let them get away with it and not prosecute anyone. And, screw those Republicans. They're the ones who want to take your paycheck, even though we just want to waste just as much money on defense as Republicans claim to.
It doesn't work, right?
What are we again? Tell me how I'm that different from John Boehner's real policies or any neocon you can think of. How are we that different?
And,
really, 3% is that different? Yeah.
We should bring in, the issue of race, especially since you've mentioned several times, the black guy will be gone and Republicans are running on race. And it's definitely a real issue. I'm not one of these people that just, oh, no, race is
just
not
denies
real.
it, yeah.
Race is not real. We don't have race. I'm a social worker, and I've seen the studies, and racist attitudes are rampant. They're on every corner, and most people that hold them don't realize they have them.
Just because people don't say that magical N-word out loud as much doesn't mean that it's not there.
It's worse than that. It's like the three idiots marching down the street with Nazi, with swastikas and wearing KKK. I'm not worried about them. Those guys are morons, and really very few people take them seriously anymore. They have
they wear their views on their sleeves, so you know where they stand.
They have the right to do that. If you want to be an idiot, you have the right to be an idiot. Go for it. It's okay with me.
Really. Yeah, go look around the houses of Congress and see how common that is in this country.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Exactly. But here's the thing. Okay? The racist attitudes, when we measure racist attitudes in sociology as opposed to in politics, it's more like you ask people, you give them pictures of people. And you ask them, so one is black, one is white, but they're all the same age, and everything else seems the same.
And you associate good words and bad words and stuff.
Right, or it's more like which one would you hire? Which one would you rather lend to? Which one would you trust to babysit your children? Or it's stuff like this. It's stuff that measures your attitude as opposed to your direct opinion of something.
And I'll admit something to that regard. I've actually taken tests like that, and they surprise me with the result. But it's a sign of maturity when you realize your own inherent bias. And it's a lot of times when you have a bias, you might not even be aware of it on a conscious level.
Right.
And that's how nefarious it can be when you're not self-aware enough to analyze why you feel a certain way. And I'll admit it. I'm a Southern person. I'm from the South. I'm from Virginia, but that's still the South. So, and where I'm from is a very divided place. When you drive around town, there's white people on this side and black people on that side. It's just the way it is, and it's the way it's been forever and ever and ever. And it's always top surveys as one of the most divided cities in America. Right. So it's not like an active thing anymore. You drive around and people are just yelling racial slurs at people, but there's just a certain current of sort of, difference there.
Here's how it's an active thing, Joe. I'll interrupt you for a second. Here's how it's an active thing. It's an active thing in that, as a black man, it is more difficult to get a job for a black man to get a job.
Oh, completely.
It is more difficult.
Even before he walks in the door, by the way.
Right. For a loan. To get a loan for a house or to buy a house in certain neighborhoods, especially anywhere on the East Coast. This is not limited to the South by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, no.
People are treated differently. It is not necessarily that the person's going to call them the N-word and throw them out of the building and then go torch their house for trying to buy a house in their neighborhood. No, we've done away with that, thankfully. But honestly, this stuff counts. When you multiply it by millions, then you see the disparity in income. And you see the disparity in unemployment and in poverty and in crime between ethnicities and between races. This is why. And you see the disparity in the justice system and how the justice system treats minorities. Well, if everyone on that jury has that bias that, a black man is more likely to be guilty, but a white man is more likely to be innocent, and they're not even aware that they have that bias, right?
Right.
And then the black man can't afford the same attorney because he can't get the same job. This is not people running around in the streets screaming, the N-word.
No.
And it's a serious thing. To me, I wish we would grow up and face that racism, because every time I see liberals complaining about racism, they want to equate anyone that disagrees with policies meant to curb racism, which in my opinion don't work, as, you must be with the KKK. That's not productive. You're not helping the problem, because these people are, if you ask people who have these attitudes that they're racist, they're going to say no, and they're going to mean it. Because, they hate the KKK. Well, if I'm wearing a KKK hood. No, but you wouldn't hire that guy because he's black.
Right.
That's racist.
And there have been surveys all the time with resumes that come in with black sounding names. They get thrown in the trash more often than not.
I don't know thrown in the trash, but they do get picked over.
Well, here's the thing I was building to too is I have attitudes that I don't think them out loud, but I'll react a certain way. I was just recently in New Orleans in Texas, and the one thing that surprises people who live in where I'm from in New Orleans in Texas, when you come out here, there's hardly any African American people compared to over there, especially New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans, obviously, it's known for that. And what's interesting is when you're just kind of walking around a city at night and you see an African American person walking toward you on the sidewalk, what are you thinking of that person? What's your initial reaction? Is it one of, I better kind of guard myself? Or is it, it's just another guy walking past me on the street? are you instantly kind of afraid of that person or not? And what surprises me is in the right circumstance, there's times where I'll have a knee-jerk reaction that's based in an inherent bias. And it's not a conscious thought, but it's self-realization when you actually sit and you think about it. Wow, why did I think that? Why did I react like that? And it's based on culture. It's based on how people are portrayed in media. It's based on, a certain prevalent attitude amongst, let's say, white people about certain races. And like, if they're predominantly criminals, like we always talk about that. Oh, well, that's the debate. Why are minorities disproportionately represented in prisons? Is it because those, as Bill O'Reilly would say, it's just those black parents just can't seem to get control of their kids.
That's not.
Wow.
No, not at all.
Wow. That is a completely ignorant, head up your ass, rooted in white privilege. And I love how actually it was recently Jon Stewart had him on his show again. And, he was literally asking him, how the hell can you not see how that's privilege? That's just your entire life. It's something that a black person doesn't even know in a lot of ways. And he talks about, oh, I'm just some normal guy from a working class place in Levittown, New York. Okay. Were black people allowed to live in Levittown? No, they were not. And you talk about how great your town was. It was working class, but it was better off than the black community down the road where they were allowed to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you only let them live in certain areas, and then you wonder why things aren't the same. They're not the same by definition. If they're allowed to live, you're allowed to live there, and they're not. Let's start there. And this is New York. This isn't Alabama. This isn't Mississippi. So people, and that's the other thing is that white people, they think that racism only exists in certain areas. Oh, if I don't live in Mississippi, if I don't live in Alabama, I don't live in a racist area. This town of San Diego has racist history of that kind of thing. Of excluding blacks and excluding Mexicans in certain neighborhoods. And those exist today, those lines. There's a lot of certain pockets of this town that have certain races in them because of that. And we're talking 50 years ago. But it's not like it was a zillion years ago. It wasn't that long ago. There are people alive today that remember this stuff personally.
I've done organizer work in this city, and I've seen that. I mean, I've gone to the neighborhoods where I've talked to people about why the neighborhood lines are drawn the way they are, and like why certain things are the way they are in the charters. And they say, yeah, it goes right back to the 60s with the passage of the Civil Rights Act and basically whole white neighborhoods in central San Diego where they had written into their community council charters that they do not rent, sell, or lease to colored people. Yes. This was legal. This was out in the open. This was not. You didn't have to be wearing a KKK hood. And I guarantee you, the people who wrote this in charters did not consider themselves racist. They didn't wear a KKK hood. No. Those people belong over there, and we belong over here. That's their.
They belong with their kind. Yeah, exactly.
Look at their community and look at yours, and tell me that they look the same to you. Please, are you blind or just dumb? But anyway, so when you finally had the passage of the Civil Rights Act, and I mean, I've seen neighborhoods where I've talked to people that have been there long enough, remember, because they're old, they're in their 80s, and they're still on these community councils. They're the ones who stayed. And they talk about how you just had white flight. You actually had a bit of a property prices plunge in the U.S. in general in the 60s because so many white people that were living in communities like that just dropped their houses. I mean, they sold them, but they sold them for very cheap and took off to suburbia. Because they knew that now black people that had some means, and most of these black people, but also Hispanics, at least in this county, that would finally be able to buy houses in their neighborhoods, and they didn't want that, so they just took off. And then you have like the neighborhoods on the country, like on the other side of the river here in San Diego, on the other side of the freeway or whatever, that were redlined, where redlining just means you draw a red line around a neighborhood, and you say anyone that comes from here, we do not rent, sell, lease, give loans, or give jobs to. And again, this was perfectly legal, and this is not even necessarily by ethnicity. It's just if you grew up in that neighborhood, if your address is in that neighborhood. So, and it's interesting how those neighborhoods, the ones with the white flight, became really bad neighborhoods for a while, like in the 80s, and then they bounced back. Whereas you go to the neighborhoods that were redlined, and they're still every bit as bad. There's every bit as much poverty and crime and just lack of upkeep and lack of infrastructure. And again, this is how it's always been.
Yeah.
And, Bill O'Reilly would point to that and say, see, that's a black neighborhood. This was a white neighborhood, and now it's a mixed neighborhood, but that's a black neighborhood. Like, well, that's how it's always been. I mean, they've been given no access to resources.
And speaking of which, Ferguson is one of those places. People wonder where all that anger comes from.
Ferguson is
and they want to just condemn that. Oh, well, why would people just throw rocks? Well, because they've got generations of pissed off all pent up over there.
Right. Right.
You know, I'd be afraid to go there, but mostly because they look at me and there's a racism there of they're just assuming that I'm part of that same white power structure that's got their foot on their throat for the last 60 years.
Racism goes both ways. It's not as if black people aren't racist.
And it's like, it's slightly more forgivable in their way. We have to break that down at some point, obviously, but it's like, you have to understand where they're coming from to the, you know.
I always quote the movie Bulworth. There's only one way to beat racism. We just have to have everybody keep fucking each other until we're all the same color. If you read millennial surveys, we're increasingly non-white. We're definitely moving in that direction.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Like, to me, I mean, simplifying that a little more in sociological terms, racism, and I would say even like racially biased attitudes, more like just cruel discrimination and ill will toward other colors and other ethnicities, comes from people being segregated. It's those people over there, and we're scared of them. Right. Whereas for the minorities and the ones, like you said, with the boot on their throats, it's those affluent people over there that want to abuse us. Whereas if you bring people together and you make them interact and you make them live in the same neighborhoods, then it's like, yeah, okay, it's those people, but here's my black friend John, and he's not like that. So slowly you realize, hey, they're people. They're people just like you. And yeah, they have a different history. Maybe they grew up a little differently, but you have more in common than you have that's different. That's how you break ethnic and racial discrimination. So when you have forced institutionalized segregation, and you've had it in places like Missouri and Virginia and New York for 400 years, this is going on before the American Revolution, how do you expect people not to be racist there? In both. I'm talking about the minorities too.
Right.
I mean, if you go to like some of the cities in the Northeast, like New York or Boston, where they're very enclave, you have like little Italy here, little Poland, little Germany, like Filipino town. Well, not Filipino town necessarily over there, but everyone's in their own little pocket. It's not even skin color; it's by ethnicity. And you wonder, okay, well, no wonder everybody hates each other. No wonder people don't get along, right? Because they don't interact with anyone that looks or sounds or behaves a little bit differently from them. It's supposed to be the United States. We're supposed to be diverse, and yet that's how people choose to live. And honestly, one of the things I really appreciate about California is we have less of that than a lot of other parts of the country. I'm not saying we've eliminated it, but it's definitely less of a problem here than it is there.
It does seem to be.
The reason I brought this in, and I kind of wanted to address this, is, okay, so we've talked about that side of it. But now, what I'm seeing, this is a very disturbing trend. Honestly, it makes me retch, is now Republicans are retorting to this somewhat oversimplified liberal criticism. Oh, if you don't like Obama, you must be racist. It's now becoming trendy to patronize black Republican, quote-unquote, leaders. Dr. Ben Carson.
Who's not a leader of anything in the West. I can be a doctor and still be an idiot brigade.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's a big brigade. But this is the kind of... So this is now becoming trendy. Oh, look, there's black Republicans. Here's a rich black man that's a Republican and very conservative. Herman Cain's another one. And running for office. So if you don't support him, you must be racist. Okay.
Or like they just elected some black congresspeople. We were talking about that in the last episode.
Oh, yes, that's another
Which is interesting, and, more power to them. That's been a criticism for a long time. Republican is the white man's party. But
well, since the 60s, before the Democrats were the white man's party. But my concern with this is it's really, talk about a straw man.
So wait, you're worried that they're using affirmative action, which they already always said was a bad thing?
No, I'm
to kind of turn the tide of racism against the Democrats?
I'm worried that we're now talking about politicians based on the color of their skin, as opposed to their positions and their qualifications to be in office, and we're saying we're doing that to end racism.
Right. And actually,
does that make sense to you, Joe? I mean,
they were just, actually, I think it was Jon Stewart who just was talking about that, making fun of it. So, the whole thing of the content of their, not the color of their skin, but the content of their character. The MLK, I Have a Dream. Are we there? No.
No, we're not. And I mean, if you look at Alan West,
the guy should be in fucking jail for one thing.
Thank
yeah.
you. Yes, he's a
read up his little fun times in Iraq, would you? Please do. Go for it. Have fun.
He was in Congress he was a one-term congressman, and where he is like one of the reddest districts in Florida.
And he got beat, barely, but he got beat.
Threw his ass out. They're like, no, this guy's insane. And he's just, the guy he's a psychopath. Like, I wouldn't want to be in a room with that guy.
He looks unstable. He does. When you hear him talk, he's trying to be nice and polite and like erudite and stuff, but you can tell behind that faceplate he's just like, okay, who can I like kill with my bare hands if I needed to? He's got that look.
Right, it's like every time I see him, I think of the movie The Spirit, where the scene where Samuel L. Jackson, obviously who's black, is wearing a Nazi uniform, which is just so weird. You're seeing a black guy in a Nazi uniform, and it's a movie, and it's making a point. But every time I look at him, I'm like, wow, this guy he's black, obviously, so it throws people off. But like, he's this hyper nationalist. Close the borders. We need stronger security. Spend money on weapons. He's just like neocon on steroids.
A guy who, if he could go into a room consequence free and just push a button and pick a Middle Eastern country to nuke off the planet, he'd probably do it and not feel a moment's guilt about it.
Right,
yeah.
he'd be pissed.
I can only get one. Damn it.
Okay, which one's the biggest one?
Hopefully I can get Iran, and then the fallout will hit another one or something on the way.
Right,
whatever.
Exactly. He's a psycho. And like Ben Carson, honestly, I can't say that about him. He seems like an okay guy to me, but the guy has no clue about politics.
No.
He's just like, well, I worked hard and I became a surgeon, therefore any black man can work hard and become a...
he knows where a kid's hypothalamus is, but I got some news for you. When you've only been doing that your whole life, you may think you can dabble in politics, but do you know your ass from a hole in the ground? No.
Well,
when I hear this guy talk about public policy, I honestly question, so you got a degree? So you got an MD? You spent 10 years in school? Really?
Well,
wow,
he must have cheated in the logic classes, because, it's like hasty generalization much?
Did you go to University of the Cayman Islands, like Aruba U? Like, what's the deal?
It's not even that. It's like, okay, look, if you look at this guy, I'm a social worker, we look at statistics. Okay, yes, he's a black man, and yes, allegedly, I haven't done the research on this myself, so don't quote me, but allegedly he came from very poor means. He grew up in, like, an all-black neighborhood. Where was it? Somewhere in let's say like the Appalachians, maybe? I'm not sure exactly where he's from. And he's obviously very successful. He got a full scholarship. He's in New York. More power to him. That's great. He's a great success story. I respect the man. Okay, I don't think he's an idiot in that sense. But you can't go off of a single case. You have to look at statistically, okay, the people that grew up in the same neighborhood as you, what is their median income now? How likely are they to be dead? How likely are they to be in prison? How likely are they to have children out of wedlock that are dependent on public support? How likely are they to be in supportive housing? What are their health outcomes like, doctor? Right? As opposed to, like someone from a white affluent neighborhood. How many of them make as much as you do, Dr. Ben Carson? Right? How many of them have never been to jail? I mean, this is what you have to look at. You have to look at trends in a macro sense and look at data. You can't just say, well, because I did it, anyone can do it. No, if you look at the statistics, it turns out that's not the case.
So he was born in Georgia and grew up in Detroit. So anyway.
Okay, those are places where if you're in an all-black neighborhood in either one of those places, your chances are, let's say, not what they are for someone coming from Hartford, Connecticut.
Not exactly, right, yeah.
There might be some discrepancies, some confounding variables that go into that equation.
It's kind of all they have, or at least it's their bid to stay relevant. But, I have some advice for the Democrats. Please just do whatever you can to not let Hillary run. You really do. And I'm already predicting. I already said this to a friend of mine. The Republicans are winning the presidency in 2016. I'm going to call it right now.
I'm with you, right? 100%.
And you may ask, how the fuck is that merry band of chuckle fucks who I on my last show said should be coming out on their debates to the circus song, the do 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 to their debates. It doesn't mean that Americans won't elect one of them, because the Democrats, what you may have in crazy, you also have in passion and the ability to sell the crazy in a palatable package.
That's what I said at the beginning of the show about their balls and their ability to sell to it, pander to them.
Balls and salesmanship are different, but anyway.
I would say they're related.
When you look over the other side and you have some milquetoast asshole like O'Malley, or like Hillary, or like, well, that's so far that's the only one that's even remotely said they were going to run on that side of the ticket. But
Biden.
Oh, Biden! That'll be the page turner right there. Yeah, sure. That'll turn the tide right around. The vice president.
Clown music.
the vice president of the asshole that everyone hates right now. Sure, that will work. Just ask Al Gore how well that works.
No, but talk about coming out to the clown music. You know, here's a little statistical fact for people that are, you know, that think that Democrats have a bigger of a chance than they do in 2016. The last time a Democratic president was elected to replace an outgoing Democratic president was in 1836. And that was Martin Van Buren, who was a vice president for Andrew Jackson, who replaced him. He only lasted 4 years. He was a one-term president. He was actually one of the, I want to say, the second or the third to be voted out of office. But the point is, that's the last time that happened. Now, you think, well, there's other Democrats that fall Democrats. Yes, but they didn't replace an outgoing Democrat. So Truman, FDR died in office.
Right.
LBJ, JFK died in office. And we haven't had two Democrats in a row since then. So this is, I mean, obviously that doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm just saying this is a trend. This is something, whereas Republicans have pulled it off.
Name the person who's going to excite the base. You're just going to be running the same kinds of idiots who just got their asses handed to them this year.
Right.
Who don't stand for anything and who just are just like, well, you know, and are just going to be sitting there making the same kinds of excuses that John McCain ended up having to make for George W. Bush, even though they had nothing to do with each other except the letter next to their name.
And look how well that worked for him.
And look how well that worked. Yeah. I mean, it didn't help that he shot himself in the foot by literally picking the most insane serving governor at the time. There is more choices now, so that should prove interesting. To be his running mate, you know. And it didn't help, but I think he was doomed from the start.
No, I feel like he chose her because no one else wanted to run with him. No one wanted to play for a losing team. It's like,
right, because it stains you. Just ask Paul Ryan about that.
Or what's his name? John Edwards, yeah.
Or Edwards, right.
Yeah, but if you, like, I mean, Palin, she's not even a politician. She wanted to be a Hollywood celebrity. She's pretty and she's dumb. Perfect. And she's a dysfunctional family. 3 things, doesn't get any better than that. So she wanted to do it so she could become a celebrity, and that's why she agreed to run. She didn't even finish her one term as governor. I don't know why anyone takes her seriously. Well, it's like, why don't we run Paris Hilton for vice president if we're going to do that? That's the way we're going to go. Or Kim Kardashian. Speaking of which, do you think John Edwards, the story of his whores, would have come out if he'd won as vice president? Something tells me they would have been able to hush that up. Anyway, it's just it's not. Yeah, it does not do any favors for your PR.
But so Democrats take a lesson from Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I know he's not a Democrat, but come on, he's basically a Democrat, or at least he's a socialist, you know. And you know, it's your only hope. It's your only hope. It's at least trying something. This shit is not working, okay? And it's like it only kind of worked in the 90s when you had someone as like smooth and dynamic as Clinton to sell it. When you've got some guy like Obama who's just politically tone deaf and has that race problem, it just isn't working. And now it's to the point where it doesn't work anymore. That same old, you keep going back to the well. And in 2012, you had just enough juice with Clinton coming back and making his big speech at the convention. You had enough juice to kind of get the truck over the hill, but now you're out of gas and you're just coasting at this point.
Yeah, in your clown car.
You need something else.
I've got more to add to that. And here's the thing: this is the kind of the variable that Joe ignored from the 90s, and that's the Perot variable. You know, in the 90s, the Republicans, that was the neocon era. They were trying to pander to the center, so Clinton and Bush Sr. were and even Bob Dole were competing for the same votes, and you had Perot come in and steal them from the Republicans. He did it both times. He was there in 96 too. And you had
he dropped out really early in 96, and Clinton would have gotten reelected anyway.
But here's the thing. Okay, this is true because Dole was a joke in many ways, but my point is the far right in that era was very unfond of the Republicans, and they were trying to find other parties. First, they tried to infiltrate the the Libertarian Party, and then you had the rise of the Reform Party. I mean, they were really pissed off at the Republicans. So the Republicans didn't have the base they have now. I mean, the left hated Clinton, but they still voted for him. And the right hated Bush Sr., but they didn't vote for him. And there you have it. Yeah. Whereas now, those tables have turned. And in 2012, in my opinion, you had the same problem. Romney was not remotely far enough to the right. And you had a couple other problems. He's a Mormon, for one, and the far right are not going to vote for a Mormon. And some of his history is from Massachusetts. He had a hard time in the South, but he managed to sell that. So that was that I feel was the Achilles heel of Republicans in that race. But you know that in 2016, somebody that labels themselves Tea Party is getting on that ticket. I don't know if it'll be Rand Paul or Ted Cruz or Mike Huckabee. I don't know who they're going to put on the ticket, but it's going to be someone that basically is trying to really unite the neocons with the far-right base. It's doable now. It wasn't doable in 2012, but it's doable now. And all they need is someone that's halfway decent, because they're running against Obama's legacy. That's not hard. It's not quite like running against Bush Jr.'s legacy. It's not quite that bad, but it's a close second.
Here's a question. How disappointed are you going to be when it ends up being Jeb Bush?
It's not going to end up being Jeb Bush. Okay. No, Joe, I don't know.
But what if it does?
I keep hearing this. Oh, it's going to be Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush. And I don't buy it.
I keep saying that to scare everyone who doesn't want that into making it not so. Because the funny thing about most of these primaries...
Listen to Joe, everybody. Yeah, Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton. Scary, scary, scary. Go vote in the primaries. Yeah, and I feel like with the Republicans, Jeb Bush does not stand a snowball's chance in hell. I mean, we saw how hard a fight that was for Romney in 2012 in places like Iowa. Even New Hampshire, yes, he won, but he got split. He couldn't even get a majority there. And he just tripped over the primaries the entire time. And that was 4 years earlier. If you put Rand Paul or Ted Cruz versus Jeb Bush in Iowa, no one's even going to look at Jeb Bush. He's not even going to be Romney. He's going to be Newt Gingrich. It's going to be the old, annoying white guy that keeps acting like he's the front runner, where no one takes him seriously. If there's anything if I'm concerned about, it's more the Democrats, but honestly, I think Hillary is going to get treated exactly the same way. Bernie
Sanders would be a collective yawn, I think.
Right, or Elizabeth Warren are running, then they're going to destroy her in those early primary states. Because here's the thing, people, and I wrote about this and I caught a lot of flack for it, and it just proved me right, because everyone bitching at me had no clue what they're talking about politically, and they get aggressive at me. Oh, you're just a misogynist. I'm talking up Elizabeth Warren, who's also a woman, but that doesn't work for you, so you're just ignoring it. Hillary's base is a bunch of idiots that have no fucking clue about the political process. And here's newsflash: those people don't vote in the primaries. They don't matter. This whole system is built to give extra weight to people who pay attention. I think that's a good thing, especially in places like Iowa, where it's a caucus state. You have to actually get off your ass and go sit in a room and listen to people present a case and then vote. You're telling me Hillary's idiot voters, they don't even know where the caucus is.
Yeah, where's the dynamic, new, fresh, this is a very short attention span. You're just going to trot out the same frickin' person. We've been seeing her. She's going to have Obama stink all over her. B, she's going to have to answer all these questions about Benghazi, which are going to come up constantly, even though it's, I don't know. Say what you will about it. I don't even want to hear I'm over it. But it is relevant if she wants to run the country. So it's just, I don't want to talk about it anymore, but it doesn't mean that she shouldn't be asked about it. Anyway, I'm just talking about my own annoyance, that's all. Anyways.
I can't stand her. She's easily my most hated U.S. politician.
Right. The fact that, really, that's going to be your leader. This political chameleon stands for nothing except being president. Okay, go. See how well that works. That works so well for Romney. Go ahead. Why not? Yeah, give it a shot. See how well that works for you.
Even work for her in 2008.
No. Hey, I'm a woman. Want to be historic to elect me? Don't look at the black guy.
Yeah, really, it was sad.
Give me a break.
But Obama actually, as a candidate, had some interesting ideas. She didn't.
That's right. I know. People forget.
I liked Obama a lot more before he became president. Let's just leave
it. If you didn't, it's like I just expect her to stroll up to the stage and go, and I'd like to thank my husband, Bill Clinton, who's right over there. It's like to remind you that my name is Hillary Clinton, and I'm standing right here, wanting to be president. So, am I president yet? Go ahead and just put a crown on my head, and then I'll just go over there.
Oh shit! What happened? Why am I
to my house again
in Iowa? Yeah. So,
wait a minute! I don't just get to be president without an election.
Yeah. So,
wow, I didn't earn it by going through the Lewinsky scandal as Bill's wife. Really? Wow. All right.
Well, Monica Lewinsky endorsed Obama in 2008. You realize that, right? Because the Clintons left a bad taste in her mouth. She said.
Wow. Wow.
That was a joke. We didn't endorse anybody.
That may be a good note to wrap up on.
That was a good one, yeah. In any case, I think we didn't exactly do this show the way we expected to do it, but I think it's a good show. I think we laughed a lot, and I think we kind of let both of our jadedness get out. So
don't get complacent. Plug your ears for the next 2 years. Drink heavily, and we'll see you in 2016 on the other side. That's what I'm saying.
You do not vote for Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton.
It's just the fact that we have to, for 2 years in this lame duck session, just watch grown men have slap fights with each other every day on TV. It makes me weep for my country.
This is the thing I wanted to wrap up on, and I should have said it earlier. I think everyone already knows it. You certainly know it, Joe. But to me, again, I believe this to be a good thing. I think that, just like with the immigration debate, pretty much with everything else, both parties have really shitty ideas. And with Democrats, it's just like, let's just pretend we don't have any problems and all these shitty bureaucracies that have not worked for the last 80 years. Let's just pretend they're not failing and just keep going. Yeah, and then you're wondering why people aren't turning out for you. And for Republicans, it's like, hey, the Salem witch trials weren't really such a bad thing. I mean, imagine what would happen if the witches were able to win. And, Japanese internment and McCarthyism, those guys, they wanted what was better. Maybe they didn't really understand.
Guys were girls and men were men. Mister, yeah. We could use a man like Herbert Hoover again.
Right, exactly.
God.
So,
please.
When you have these two entities going at each other, why wouldn't you want gridlock? Go, eat each other. Go, yeah, come on, go.
Yeah, but there are things that aren't getting done that should in the meantime. But anyway.
Again, see, to me, that
we already have no chance at that anyway.
Exactly, and to me, that should is a very loaded statement. I mean, these are policies.
I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word should for prison reform, for the drug war, for the fact that we're locking so many people up. And incidentally, Rand wants to do something about that. So does Cory Booker.
To me, the gridlock slows that down and makes that less of a problem. When I hear should, I hear the things coming out of Bernie Sanders.
Gridlock in the federal government doesn't stop the state and the cities for locking people up en masse, sadly.
First of all, a lot of the federal deadlock, there are federal prisons, and a lot of the
but there's tons of state prisons,
a lot of
too.
The immigration-related stuff, of course, is federal as well as the terrorism-related stuff. Secondly, a lot of the state law enforcement systems do receive, and incarceration systems do receive funding from the federal government. So anything you can do to clip their balls, you have my support.
They're still going to get their funding.
I'm not saying it stops at 100%. I'm saying it's a thorn in their side, and that's a good thing. But when I hear the word should, I hear the stuff coming out of Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren's mouth where, banking reform is not happening, or the schools are not getting funded, or infrastructure is not getting updated. And those are real problem statements. See, when progressives talk about problems, I mostly agree with them, mostly. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. But Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and Dennis Kucinich is another one, my kind of beef with these kind of politicians is most Democrats and most politicians, most people are not like you. And you can't just expect, just like Ben Carson can't just claim everyone is just like him. The same way with this, most politicians are crooks. Most bureaucrats are lazy. Most of these laws don't work. So this, let's fix government approach, I don't see it. What I see is the two clown brigades that we've been bashing all night. And the fact that they're bashing each other instead of getting together and eat the country like it was 10 years ago under Bush Jr., I might remind you. To me, that's a relief. It's like there's a famous line from Fiddler on the Roof. May the Lord bless and keep the Tsar far away from us. And that's what I'm seeing. And it does kind of make me laugh, and it makes me very critical of the government and just how, like you said, grown men having slap fights. At the same time, I would rather have that than have these pricks working together.
If there's anything dumber, Democrat or Republican, so these pricks work together.
But it would be funny if it weren't true. Well, in any case, very, very fitting and appropriate. Thank you for listening. I'm Neurotoxin.
I am Joe Ryan. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to The Edge of Chaos. We can be found on the internet at edgeofchaospodcast.com. That's edgeofchaospodcast.com. Contact the show, edgeofchaospodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at edgeofchaosshow. We can also be found on Facebook at facebook.com/theedgeofchaos. Neurotoxins blog can be found at neurotoxins with an S, fyg.blogspot.com. For Neurotoxin, this is Joe Ryan. Thank you for listening to The Edge of Chaos.
Mirror it itself. Why would I be excited that a Democrat won? Seriously, over the past 8 years, the Democrats didn't do shit. Basically, the last 8 years, I feel the Republicans stood around farting, and the Democrats went, ooh, let me smell it. I find it astonishing that anyone is still a loyal Democrat or a loyal Republican. What are you basing this on? How is it possible? What is it that you see? I don't see what you're seeing. What is it that the Democrats or the Republicans have done for any of you in the past 30 years that has made any difference in your life? And yet, people hang in, which makes me wonder, what the fuck? I believe you're delusional. I believe you're seeing something that isn't there. And we call that hallucinating. And I know about hallucinations because I took LSD when I was young, just to prepare me for this moment in time. I saw my refrigerator turn into a puma and run away. And I tracked that son of a bitch for 3 days, mostly wondering, what am I gonna tell my parents? And when I finally caught up with it in the middle of the woods, and I was cutting open its stomach in order to get a beer out, as crazy as I was at that point, I was less crazy than anybody in this room who's still a Democrat or a Republican.